Welcome back, stream viewers and listeners. See, I'm getting so used to doing this from the radio, but now it's great to have you here on the Peggy Smedley Show. As you know, we're coming live from CES 2018 here in Las Vegas. And my first guest here was once employed to manually process, satellite telemetry data. But instead, what is it, automated the whole process, in your first week? Is that right, Rob?
That's right. You're going way back into the archives
I
here,
am.
Peggy.
We're digging deep. And since then, you've gone on to launch your own company dedicated to managing connected products that are available to everyone. So I'm going to welcome Rob Conant, and you are the founder and CEO now of Cirrent.
That's right.
So, I'm going to tell everybody, I've known you for I don't know how many years now, Rob. It's been a long time. We've been in this industry, I think, a little too long, but good.
The industry's catching up with the vision that we had back in 2002. That's the way I think about it.
I think it's exciting because for those who don't know the history, it's fun to know we knew it way long before it was the Internet of Things. We knew it when it was M to M, but you knew it even longer than I did because you were back in the days of when you were a co-founder of Dust Networks,
That's right.
With Joy.
Yeah, that's right.
When you guys were involved in Dust, and I'm going to tell people because that's why your company now has a really good history of understanding why your technology today is so important. When you co-founded Dust, you were really the mesh founders. You guys understood why this industry was going to change everything. So,
that's right.
And I think it's important just to give a little history of why today what is the Internet of Things wouldn't be if it wasn't for what you and Joy did, Joy Weiss. Yep. It understood why sensors were going to change everything.
Yeah. It was actually, there was a guy named Chris Piester, who's a professor at UC Berkeley, who was a real visionary. He had a bunch of proposals into DARPA about really collecting information from the battlefield, so people knew everything about everything all the time. And that vision, connected sensors everywhere, got people excited around academia. This is probably 1996 to 1999. Got people super excited, and that led to the creation of Dust Networks in 2002. We started that in 2002, and eventually sold it to Linear Technologies. And we wrote something at that point, I think it might have been in M2M magazine, called The Third Industrial Revolution.
That was.
This was 2003, 2004.
When I first launched it.
That's right. That was a long time ago. And one of the cool things about it is I run into people all the time who say, Dust Networks, I remember that. I remember seeing those things and hearing about that vision. And now it's inside Cisco, inside GE, you see Samsung talking about this. Any company that's making any kind of electronic product is thinking about the Internet of Things, and it all comes from that vision.
And I think that's what's important because you guys understood that was going to change the way we see this ability to connect things. So let's step now. When you look back and you say, currently you have this partnership with companies who understand where we are today. So let's talk about your company today. Why you decided, you've been in this long history, you understand, now you have a company. Talk about your company and why it was important to start what you did today.
Sure. Well, one of the reasons we're so excited to be here at CES is consumer electronics products are all going to be connected over time. I think it was Mark Andreessen that said every electronic product is going to be connected to the internet. And I think he's right. I think that will happen. There's no reason not to do it.
And
but
that's
the challenge,
scary if you think about that.
It can be scary.
Yeah.
The challenge from a consumer standpoint is that effectively these companies, all these companies out here behind us, ask you as a homeowner or as a user to be an IT manager for your product. And that's not viable. Even IT managers don't want to be IT managers. People just want to buy things and use them. Everybody wants things to be easy to use, but it's not easy.
They don't want it. They want to know that it's connected, but they just want to know that it's secure. They don't want to know how it got connected. They just want it connected.
Just want to buy it and have it work. And a lot of people go in that aisle at Best Buy with all the connected products, and they just want to run away because it's scary, it's hard, it's complicated, and so these companies won't sell the products they want to sell. They won't deliver those use cases to customers unless we can address the connectivity issue and make it really easy for customers. One of our partners did a study of online reviews of connected products, and they found that 40% of the negative reviews are because of setup and connectivity issues.
But isn't that the right thing though? Shouldn't a consumer or any business shouldn't have to worry about that? That should be something, that's been a problem in our industry forever, is interoperability.
Yes.
And that's why the bad guys get in. People the average consumer and even some enterprises try to do things that they don't know what they're doing. They shouldn't be cooks in the kitchen when they don't know how to cook. I mean, that's what we're talking about, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then when you do have a problem, who do you call? Do you call your internet service provider? Do you call the manufacturer of the router? Do you call the company that makes the product? Nobody takes responsibility for the product actually working and delivering the value of the product. And so consumers get frustrated. Maybe they have an uncle or a cousin or someone else who knows the technology stuff that they call in to help out, but that's not viable for mainstream adoption of these products. And so as an industry, the reason I started the company is I believe as an industry, it's our job to solve that problem for customers.
So how exactly is your company then going to solve that? Because it's an interesting thing to describe what you do, because everybody says they make lives easier for individuals, but is that really happening?
Yeah, well here's what we did. We recognized that more and more of the Wi-Fi routers inside the home are provided by the internet service providers. So
the ISPs that we're talking about.
That's right, so Comcast, Charter, AT&T and Verizon, all these guys. Most IHS forecasts that 90% of the Wi-Fi routers in homes are going to be provided by ISPs by 2020. People won't be buying Wi-Fi routers at Best Buy, they'll be taking what the ISPs give them. And so that's an incredible control point for them to fix Wi-Fi for consumers, but they need to actually do something with it, and they need to make that technology available to the companies that make the connected products. And so what we've done is partnered with a bunch of the big internet service providers to change the way Wi-Fi works in the home, and we deliver that capability to companies that make connected products to make it easier. So when you buy something like, we just announced 2 days ago, a partnership with Electrolux. So you buy an Electrolux connected appliance, you bring it home, and it actually connects up to the internet before you do anything. You plug it in, it connects.
And it's connected. There's no dealing with any of the headaches that you would a typical router that you'd have to go buy.
It just connects. And it's almost a cellular-like connection for a connected product. It's pretty magical.
It's magical. I was going to say, just right then and
there.
How does it work? How does it work? Someone's going to go, are you kidding? You just took the pain out of that.
Yeah. All the pain out.
Talk about the security of that part, because everybody says, when I deal with my ISP and I know it's secure, and I always tell people, no, it doesn't necessarily mean it's secure unless you've done it right, because everybody says, well, I've changed my passwords. No, you're not changing your passwords. And that's where the bad actors get in. That's when we run into these problems when we connect these products that aren't necessarily secure.
Yeah, that's right. And that's, a lot of these companies that make these products, they don't specialize in networking technology. They don't specialize in security.
They like saying they do, but they don't.
That's right. They kind of count on their vendors to supply that security. What we've ended up doing is working hard on the security and vetting that security with the internet service providers that actually feel a lot of responsibility for the consumer security as well. So one of the things we do, for example, is, if you buy say you buy a Wi-Fi speaker, when you bring that speaker home, it shouldn't be sending data to some website in Russia, for example, right? There should be a very limited numbers of domains.
That Russia again,
This isn't fake news, by the way. This is something that we actually do. It should only be delivered to a specific number of domains. It should go to Pandora. It should go to Spotify. It should go to the manufacturer. If it's going anywhere else, there's a problem. But today, the product company doesn't have the ability to see where it's going, and the network operator doesn't know what kind of product it is. And so we effectively bring them together so that together they can solve that security problem for customers. So if a product is doing something it shouldn't be doing, the network operator can flag that, they can notify the customer, we can notify the product company, and the network operator can actually block that product from going to that domain it shouldn't be going to. So that's the kind of security we need for the IoT.
So do you actually have to have a lot of partnerships in order to make this work? I mean, because that's the critical part of all of this, because we lack, again, what you talk about, that interoperability. So do you have to have more Electrolux partnerships to make this work? Or again, the customer's going to go, well, I'm stuck with, do I do Google Home? Do I use Amazon Alexa? What's my problem here? Or every time I've got to hope that you have made the partnerships work.
Yeah, that's right. So the way we see it, the first thing that has to happen is the internet service providers have to get on board, because they have to change the way Wi-Fi works. And so we've focused a lot of our attention on getting those partnerships live and operational. And at this point, we have 127 million homes that are covered by our technology. So that's about 15% of the global broadband population. So we're not at 100%, but a huge footprint. Will be 225 million by the end of 2018 is our current forecast. About 25% of the broadband homes worldwide. So huge fraction of the population is moving in this direction through those partnerships with ISPs. And recently we've opened that up for the product companies to start taking advantage of it. So we've announced about a half of a dozen product companies that are using this, but you'll see this in dozens of products over the course of this year. So from a consumer standpoint, when you buy these electronic products, you'll see a logo of ZipKey. So there's a name ZipKey. You'll see that on the product, and you'll see that in the internet service providers offering. So Comcast, for example, if you have a Comcast router, it's ZipKey enabled. Yeah, exactly. And so you'll see that from Electrolux, you'll see that from D-Link, you'll see that from others.
So we kind of have that ZipKey seal of approval we'll kind of talk about. So Rob, we've been talking about how you guys launched this company and how you get customers, and you've got some partnerships, and let's talk a little bit about how this is all working, and exactly, do you go to the customers first? Do you go actually to the ISPs? So the partnerships that you're doing, tell us exactly how that you make that work, because that I think is most important for us.
Yeah, sure. You know, we spent, so I started this business about 3 years ago, and effectively spent the first year deep in with the internet service providers to try to understand where they're headed with their businesses. Because fundamentally, they're the ones that are in the driver's seat of Wi-Fi in the home, because they provide those Wi-Fi routers and they remotely manage those Wi-Fi routers for their customers. And so they have an incredible ability to rapidly improve Wi-Fi for their customers, and an incredible amount of power in the market to do that. The challenge that they all face, of course, is they're all regional. You know, every one of them has a little sliver of the global population. None of them actually encompasses enough that it's interesting for a product company perspective. And so it took us a long time to get to the point where we really understood the dynamics there well enough to be able to partner with enough of them regionally so that we could provide a global footprint for products to take advantage of this new capability they're rolling out. And so we spent a lot of time with that, and then after that we moved over to the product companies to deliver that capability.
So you'll continue from the ISP then to the product companies.
Yeah, exactly. So we have 127 million homes today. We'll be 225 million by the end of this year, and the products are just hitting the market that use ZipKey. So we've announced about a half a dozen companies so far, but you'll see a bunch of companies making things like TVs, sound systems. We demonstrated Bose speakers. You'll see all sorts of other products hitting the market using ZipKey over the course of this year.
Is that something that's important that you see to the growth? Because I would think that just going through the ISPs isn't the best way only for your growth, that the manufacturers that you're talking about, really, when you think about the Internet of Things and you think about connected devices, that's where the potential really has a lot of opportunity as well with those ISPs.
Absolutely. You know, I got to say, when I started this company, people looked at it and they said that's a Herculean task to get the internet service providers and then get the product companies. There's a lot of business development that has to happen. It's a little bit like Uber. They need the drivers and the riders, right? And OpenTable, they need the restaurants and the people making the reservations. Tough to get started with this kind of a business, but we've gotten to the point where it's the volume of ISPs that we've partnered with is large enough that it's super compelling for the product companies. And so it's really a wave that's kind of hitting us now.
When you look at the ISPs, right now there's a lot of competition. The market's changing, and we talk about who's going to survive, you know, and there's a lot of discussion about who's owning what in the marketplace, because they're really right now trying to make sure that they can sustain themselves. Are you concerned about that, because they're struggling in their own ability to actually own market share right now?
Yeah, well, you know, I think it's different in the different markets, but in the US market, the cable companies have the best capability to deliver broadband to the customers, because they have the pipe that goes out to all the homes. In some areas you have fiber as an alternative, but most cases it's cable. What the cable companies face as a challenge is cord cutters, reducing video subscribers, and they recognize that delivering a great broadband experience to customers is really critical for their ongoing success. And so you see companies like Comcast just doing incredible innovations on top of their broadband network. They launched this XFi app about this time last year. It was actually at CES last year, that provides users more visibility into their broadband experience and allows users to pause the internet over dinner, for example. If you don't want your kids doing the internet in the late night, you can actually pause it for all their devices. Incredible service.
Having dinner with your kids, maybe there's a concept we're bringing back, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Who thought? Who'd have thunk it, right? So let's think about this. Other things that are happening right now, when you think about the Internet of Things and you think about what we're doing, artificial intelligence and all the other things that are happening in this space, what do you think is the biggest thing now that's changing that we need to think about, that for our viewers and our listeners who say it's an exciting time? Is it voice interfaces? What is most exciting to you right now?
I got to say I'm really excited about the voice interfaces. I think that natural interface that we have to other people it's a natural way for us to engage with other things inside our homes. We've kind of historically, we have adjusted our behavior to fit the needs of the machines. That's why we're comfortable with keyboards and mice and small screens. But a voice interface is something that's very natural, it's very human, it's embedded in our DNA to understand voice and to speak. And so that way of engaging with things around us is so natural and so comfortable. I think there's a lot of innovation that has to happen to get it to the point where it is more natural for people. I have a 6-year-old boy at home, and he's figured it out. He can do more with Alexa than I can. It's really incredible. And he told me he doesn't really know what I do, or doesn't really have a very good concept of what I do professionally. But he told me the other day, he said, "Daddy, why can't we turn off the lights with Alexa?" I don't have that enabled in my house, but the 6-year-old boy is coming up with these ideas because it's so natural, it's so human, it's such a natural way for us to engage with things.
Wait till he says, "Daddy, get the Alexa dots and we get buttons and we can play with the game." And he starts getting frustrated because he can't play it the way he wants. But that is true. It is true. And think about the whole concept of trying to communicate that way. And what do you think the next thing we'll be doing? We talk about it's going to be ordering and things that we're doing now, but the next generation already does things simply. They know how to swipe, and it's a natural extension. Is voice just that natural extension? It hasn't mastered the way we talk because it hasn't engaged enough with artificial intelligence to understand as quickly as we want. But do you think that's what's going to happen? Our new generation is going to understand everything will be voiced, from how we do with our cars, to our homes, to everything, our garages, opening everything in our lives? Yeah,
I do think so. I think that, when the iPhone was introduced 10 years ago, we got used to pinching and zooming, and that was actually a natural way for us to interact with things, visual and sort of touching. And voice is the next generation of that. It's hard to predict exactly how we'll engage with that, but I think that the difference between the phone world and the voice world is that the voice world is much more immersive. It's no longer about what you see on this little box that you carry in your pocket. It's actually about engaging with the building of your home, engaging with your car directly, not through a small physical space, but in a more natural human way. So as I'm walking around my home, these systems will know where I am in my home and will forecast what I might want to do. They might. I don't take a bath every night, but if I did, maybe they would recognize that. Maybe they would fill up. I think Kohler just made an announcement that they have Alexa enabled bathtub. So it'll fill up my bathtub for me. Maybe it'll predict that I need to do that.
Our lives are going to be so changed by systems knowing exactly what we do and how we do it. Is there some things to be scared by that? To the sense that our homes will know exactly our habits, to the sense that how will they change in the way our lives are interacted? They know exactly what we do. Is there a good thing or a bad thing that come along with that, being by that? That whole development.
You're asking someone who I may be beyond my flexible years. I have a particular way of thinking about these things. I gotta say, if it didn't exist and you said, what if one of the largest companies in the world is tracking your movements every day, would you feel comfortable with that? I would probably answer no, but I gotta say I love it. I love my phone. I love using it all the time. And they have that information, and I've given them the ability to have that information because of the convenience that it brings me. And as we look forward at these new interfaces, I do think there's an inherent exchange that we're making. We're providing that data in exchange for that service. And I think as a society, That's something that we haven't quite figured out yet, from a regulatory standpoint, but also from a personal standpoint.
And that was something I was asking on the panel that I moderated today, is now the ability to take all that data, and those companies that were on there, from Google to IBM to Samsung, the ability to monetize from that information, because they're now taking all this data, and now they're learning to use it as a service that you just described, and the ability to actually figure out how to use all this information, and now say, how do we monetize it? And a few years ago, as consumers, we weren't comfortable with that, but because we've learned at the convenience you just said, with voice interfaces and things like that, we are now letting Google Home and Amazon Alexa into our homes and to be more comfortable. But at the same time, I asked the audience today, how many of you would be comfortable in an autonomous vehicle? About half the audience was comfortable. We still haven't made that transition yet with autonomous vehicles, but we have made it with letting home devices like that. So how long do you think it'll take before we get that of sitting in the back seat or in the passenger seat of letting a car, talking to a car and say, take me somewhere?
Yeah, well, I gotta say that I get into the car and there's an Uber driver behind the wheel and I have no idea whether that person's a good driver or not. And I do that all the time.
So
I have no idea, right?
You have no idea who's driving.
Yeah, exactly. Like I don't know, the guy may be competent or not competent. So I put a lot of faith in people today, and those people are totally varied, person to person. I have zero visibility. Just because it's a human, I feel comfortable with it. When I get behind the wheel of a self-driving car, I'm a technical person, so looking at it analytically, I should have a heck of a lot more confidence if that company is willing to get behind that self-driving car to insure it, to provide me some guarantees about my safety when I get into that vehicle. I believe those systems are actually quite solid. I think that will happen. I think that switch is going to be incredibly rapid. As I was walking over here today, I took a step in the crosswalk in front of a self-driving car just to check to see what would happen. And it stopped.
And it stopped.
And I got to say, if I'm going to step in front of a car as a pedestrian, I would prefer that it be a self-driving car.
And think about that. That's an interesting point. We now have to understand how our lives are going to change, because it's not just the self-driving car that has to. We have to change our entire infrastructure, right? So I think that's the way we have to think about what's going to change around us. And that's what we talk a lot about. So when we get that, it's the car that has to change, our world is going to change. So things are changing extremely rapidly right now. How long before we as a society are going to actually say everything's going to change? It's to change all around us.
Yeah. If you look back to when we started talking about the Internet of Things, things have changed radically, right? We can communicate with people, video conference, so easily. Communications has totally radically changed over the last 15 years. And I think over the next 15 years, physical space is going to totally change. I'm a skier. I drive from the Bay Area up to Lake Tahoe. It takes me somewhere between 3.5 and 8 hours, depending on how much snow there is. And I gotta say, I'm gonna get into a self-driving car and I'm gonna go up there overnight every time, as soon as those things are available. That's gonna change real estate. It's gonna change where people live. It's gonna change where people work. It's gonna change how people get to work, how people travel. Everybody's gonna get on an RV and get out here to Las Vegas instead of getting on airplanes. It's going to change everything.
But doesn't that all go back to what we said at the beginning of our conversation, back to the sensors that you were all involved? If we didn't have these smaller sensors into the devices we're talking about, like an Apple Watch, we couldn't have done that. And that the price and the size of these sensors have all changed, because now we have sensors in buildings. We have sensors in just about everything that are enabling us to track these things, right? And the chips that we have.
Yep, that's right. I think we kind of, in the technology world, we're building this stack of technology, and we've kind of continuously pressed down on the price and improved the performance of the underlying chips to the point where today you can get a Wi-Fi chip for less than $1. That's why people are putting these things in everything, and that'll continue to happen, and it allows us to build more and more on top.
And go back to that about the Wi-Fi right now, because I think the Wi-Fi is going to be the critical part to this, because we have to be able to track this information and get it almost anywhere, just like what you have with your key. How are we going to be able to enable that so that consumers can get their information? And how important is that going to be in our ability to get more things that are connected to the internet? How is that going to play a critical role as we continue to connect more devices?
Yeah, well, one of the challenges in this industry in general is backwards compatibility, and Wi-Fi has really nailed that. If you look at Wi-Fi, they've, the reason there are a billion Wi-Fi homes is because that technology, each step along the way, they've made it backwards compatible. So if you buy something that's Wi-Fi, you can have confidence that it'll work with your Wi-Fi router at home. And a lot of technologies haven't had the ability to do that backwards compatibility. So a lot of smart people have been really thoughtful about that. And Wi-Fi has become ubiquitous. Now, if you go into a place like San Francisco, I don't know that you can find a single square foot in San Francisco that's not covered by a Wi-Fi network. It's easy to find.
If you go sometimes in the mountains, you still might not get some connectivity.
Maybe.
I'm thinking as you're driving, as you go to Tahoe, I think
there
you
may
might
be
not.
A couple spots.
I was going to say some spots you might not get it, but all right.
But it's an incredible ubiquitous technology and there's some real challenges with it, and you got a lot of smart people working on those challenges. But how many? One of the things I did in a previous company was roll out large-scale smart metering networks for big electric utilities. So they want to know what's happening in the electrical grid all the time. We ended up having to use cellular technology, which was expensive.
Right.
It cost us about $45 for every cellular module and about £1 a month for the cellular services in the UK. Almost every one of those homes had Wi-Fi, but the challenge was we couldn't access it because everybody had an independent password, everybody had an independent router, but it was ubiquitous. So there's some real kind of jurisdictional challenges with Wi-Fi, but once we overcome those, we think we can make it so that sensors in these individual devices are easy to deploy, easy for people to buy, they just work automatically out of the box. Kind of a cellular-like connection, the vision that we had around M2M. The issue with M2M is it's so expensive, even today, but if we can do that, have a similar kind of a service with Wi-Fi chipsets and Wi-Fi connection rates, that it opens up a whole new world of connected products.
Are we talking about doing all this now? Are we talking before we get all this? It's going to take us years, to get the access that we're talking about and to keep our security concerns down. Are we ever going to get to a point that we say, we've got all of the things we're talking about now? Or it's just not going to be there. We're always going to have security concerns. We're always going to have data problems, because the idea right now that we're talking about is we're just connecting so many devices, and even with Wi-Fi, are we ever going to get that where we're connected 24/7? I don't know that we always have some issues.
There are always issues, but we always address those issues and can keep moving forward. And I think with Wi-Fi, we just depend on it. It is an integral part of our lives these days. And all of these companies that are down here are going to be using Wi-Fi for their demos. Everybody's using it for their phones. It's an incredible dependence on this technology, and it's gotten to the point where it is ubiquitous and reliable. And I think for connected products, the challenge has largely been around the consumer side of it, because we expect consumers to figure it out. And a lot of people just don't even know what's the difference between cellular and Wi-Fi. They just know something has to connect. To really make that simple, I think once we make it really simple for users, I think it will become ubiquitous. And so in your kitchen, all of your appliances will be Wi-Fi connected. Really anything electronic in the home, I think will be connected once we solve this usability problem for consumers.
Rob, I think we have a question on Twitter, so let's hear what the question is. So let's repeat that so someone hears. Do you cover the Metro Phoenix the Chandler area? So
that is a good question, and honestly, I do not know the answer to that question.
So now you're going to have to let us know so that we can tweet that back out for us.
I will do that.
We'll have to find that one out. But see, we have someone wanting to know if you cover that. So
I
now
would
you
love
have a
to cover
future
Chandler.
Business. You have a future business opportunity to get to Chandler. So we have someone watching who wants to know that. We'll have to tweet that one out and answer that. So what did you ever get in trouble when you were automated? I have a question for you that we had asked earlier. So did you ever get in trouble when you automated your satellite data job so long ago? I want to know about that.
That was interesting. So when I was at, I had this job. I was supposed to analyze all this data coming down from a satellite, and I'm one of these guys that I would way rather install a drip system to water my garden. It may take me 100 hours than do it for 40 minutes, once a month. All about automation, making things really simple, fixing things so that they're really simple. And in that job, I went in and I automated all the data analysis so that the job that was supposed to take me about a year ended up taking me about a month. I automated it and then got it done, and I went in and I said, okay, well, what am I going to do now? And the guy, to his credit, a guy named Supriya Chakrabarti, he's an incredible guy. He said, "You're going to design something to go on our next rocket." And so I designed a space telescope to look at the helium around the North and the South Pole. And he gave me space on this rocket to put this space telescope up there. And so I designed that, built it, and then was lucky enough to go to White Sands, New Mexico to launch it.
Nice.
It was incredible.
That was a good experience. Wow. So there you go. There's something we were dying to know there. That's really exciting. So let's look at all of this now. When we look at all the things we've been seeing, and what do you think is on the horizon for us? You can't look 5 years out, 3 years out, even 2 years out, because as soon as you and I are talking, it's going to change.
Yeah.
But let's just say, what's the big thing for 2018? We look at all this out here at CES, and we're talking about artificial intelligence, machine learning, big data, all the things everyone's talking. Blockchain, that's the big word I said just before you came on.
Yep.
And that's really important. What do you think will be, is it going to be Wi-Fi? Is Wi-Fi going to be the big thing? I mean, that's what you're talking about for 2018, but realistically, is it going to be voice like we just talked about? But what is it voice interfaces? What do you think 2018 is going to be all about?
I think the two biggest things that I see are the two things that you brought up. Voice is number one. Voice as an interface. If Apple, every Apple keynote, they talk about the post-PC world. I think people will start thinking about the post-phone world. What does the post-phone world look like? How do I interface with things without using my phone? You'll see product companies that don't think about making an app first, they think about making a voice interface first. I think you'll see more and more of that, because you'll get to the point where most consumers that these companies are going to sell products to will have the ability to do a voice interface, and companies will prioritize that. So I think voice will be the common interface for the home over the next couple of years, and that's a radical shift. So when people come into my house, they won't need my phone to control things. They won't even need the remote control. They'll use voice, which is a natural local interface for those products. So I think that's going to be a huge shift, especially inside homes. And then I think outside of homes, it's going to be all about self-driving cars. I think that is going to have massive change in not only the way we transport ourselves, but the way society works. I understand that about 25% of the land use within cities is dedicated to cars. Parking, roads, parking garages, gas stations, service centers, 25% of the land. And if you think about California, like a city like San Francisco, one of the biggest issues there is availability of housing, which is effectively the availability of land. Commute times are determined by distance. So being able to put people in a higher density situation, it's going to totally transform city planning, it's going to totally transform real estate. I think the reverberations of that are going to go on for decades.
If you think about that, are we ready to do that? I mean, we're talking about it, but don't we have a long way to go before we get there yet? I mean, because you talk about it's dedicated, but you've got to get public and private partnerships working together. I mean, there's a lot still that has to be done to get everybody on the same page on that.
There is. I think that it's going to be something that will play out over years, not months. So you'll see steps forward in each year. My daughter, who's 9 now, my forecast is she'll never have a driver's license. There'll be self-driving cars before she reaches that age. 7 years, we'll see.
Isn't that somewhat for you scary? I mean, because we look at right now, I say the generation today, 20-year-olds, don't even know how to read a map. If they didn't have Google, they wouldn't know how to read a physical map. Yeah. I mean, they just don't know that. So, I mean, that's the same thing. You're saying she won't have a driver's license. I mean, is that really a good thing or a bad thing? Because, like,
Well, so I grew up out in the country. It scares me a little bit too, but it reminds me, I grew up out in the country, and I went to my grandmother's house one time in Idaho, and lightning had struck the pump for her well. And so we ended up going out there and like figuring out how to fix the well. And she lamented the fact that a lot of people didn't know how to fix pumps at the time. And the reality is, for my life, I don't need to know how to fix a pump. There's no reason I know how to fix a pump. But for her, it felt like the passing of an era when people don't have pumps on their property anymore, when they depend on the infrastructure of a city. And so I understand that kind of thinking about the way the technology has been and losing those skills. Like, my kids will never learn how to write in cursive, most likely.
That cursive scares me, though. I I just think that's something we all should know how to write is cursive.
Yeah.
I mean, have you seen, if everybody starts writing like a doctor, I'm scared. We don't know how to write cursive.
I'm glad you haven't seen my handwriting.
I mean, it's just frightening to think you're not going to know how to write in cursive. I think that's just, reading, writing, arithmetic. You really need those things, right? I mean, but seriously, that is true. They're not teaching it anymore.
Yeah, they're not teaching it anymore. And, the way I see it, I have a little bit of techno-utopian in me. I look at 100 years ago, 50 years ago, even 10 years ago, and things are just better. Things are a lot better. And today there are 33,000 people every year in the United States that die from car accidents. And it's I can name people that I have known who have died in car accidents. Some of them. A lot of it was drunk driving.
It's because of distracted driving. It's because they're texting. I mean, that's the reality of why that happens.
I can't tell you that I've never texted and drove at the same time.
Yeah, well, it's the number one thing I preach on my show every April about what people do. But the fact is our autonomous vehicles going to be smart enough? Will they have enough machine learning and artificial intelligence to be able to make the decision of two people and which one to save, the mother and the baby or the child on the bike? Will those cars be smart enough to make that decision at that time at the intersection, whereas a human still has enough compassion to know what to do? Will our cars know?
I'm not sure that humans can
rationally
think that quickly, or even make that decision. And I understand that there will be challenges, and those companies that make that software will have to, effectively, they're going to be the insurers for their cars, and they're going to need to figure out how to do that. And I do have a lot of confidence in systems that where people go back and they look at things and they fix them. So just another example about self-driving cars. If you look at the FAA, every time there's a plane crash, they go in and they analyze the plane crash, and they understand what went wrong, not only at the surface level, but levels down below that surface level. And that level of engineering rigor that they bring into addressing airplane crashes is what led to 0 fatalities in 2017 in the airline industry. But that level of rigor today has no place in automotive, in cars. And because largely they'll just say it was the driver's fault. The driver was distracted, because it's the vast majority of the time it's the person's fault. Yeah. And that every once in a while, it's something like there was something with Ford where the keys would get stuck, or something would happen with the keys. There was the Takata airbag. When it's a technical issue, they do a great job at addressing it and getting the death from those technical issues down to 0. Well, but when it's a human issue, they can't.
Safety in automotive is amazing. I mean, what the engineering is done in an automotive, in the automotive industry is amazing. We all know that. There's nothing they haven't done to ensure the safety of our cars. I think the issue now, it's human error. I mean, mostly those 33,000 that you mentioned are distracted driving. And it's not just because they're texting, they're putting up makeup, they're eating, they're doing anything else but driving.
Exactly.
And people that get into a car don't realize you're driving a car. And you're supposed to keep your eyes on the road's hand on the wheel every time. Yep. So it's a good point that you make. And at that point, when we have all these devices, what role will Wi-Fi play in an automobile?
Yeah, well,
will it?
I think for one, your vehicle should be able to talk to your house. I think that hasn't really happened effectively today, but I think it will over time. So we're working with a number of car manufacturers, so that when the cars show up in the home, they connect to the internet automatically without the user having to do anything. I think you'll see more and more of that. Today most vehicles, or significant fraction of vehicles, have a cellular connectivity. But it's just still expensive. If they can offload some of that onto Wi-Fi, it'd be more effective for users and for the car manufacturers.
Are we going to have to do that, though, considering how much they're trying to connect everything? I mean, the idea now is, what about things that we're talking about also in the medical industry? I mean, you're doing everything Wi-Fi in the house, what about, personal medical devices that we're talking about as well?
What we see happening in the industry is most things that are in the home or in the office are Wi-Fi. Most things that are attached to the person are Bluetooth and depend on the phone for an internet connection. And then most things that are mobile will use cellular. And those are what we see as the three predominant wireless technologies that are that people will depend on over time. And Wi-Fi is a really critical one, especially for voice interfaces and anything that gets deployed inside the home. And one of the big challenges that you don't hear people talking about very much, but is underlying a lot of the challenges that these companies are facing is how do you make it possible for multiple users to engage with a product inside the home? If you look at most of these smart connected products today require a phone app. You have to log in on that phone app, and then you as the homeowner have an interface to it. But what about other guests in your home? What about the other family members inside the home? There's not a very effective mechanism for sharing or allowing multiple person access.
That interoperability of what we're talking about still doesn't exist to make it convenient for everyone to use that. And that's where the big gap still exists.
Well, that's right, and that's, even if you think about it, with a TV, you have a physical remote, and you leave the remote on the table, and anyone can come up and use that remote. But we don't do that for our other smart products yet. And so there's a usability model that hasn't really been developed, and I think voice has a great mechanism to address that, because voice sits in the home independent of your phone.
So do we need a government standard to help us push us there, like Senator Mackey tried to do on security side? Do we need that maybe on something on voice to help us kind of push us that way? Or no?
I'm not sure we should talk about politics, but
well, he tried to do it on the standard kind of side,
But I think that what's going to happen is you're going to see the companies that are driving either the phones or the voice interfaces, or the internet service providers driving their own approaches.
It's not necessarily driven by government, but you have to get people all going and pushing together.
That's right. What you need is you need innovators to be able to leverage the power of the big industry players in order to drive new de facto standards and new ways of doing things. If you look at companies like Google and Amazon, they with their voice interfaces, they've each built out an ecosystem, right? And Apple has their own ecosystem. And
that's the problem.
Well, to some extent, but they're able to move quickly, and they're able to drive rapid change in the industry. So CES last year, you saw a huge number of Alexa-enabled products. And I thought that was a great innovation by Amazon to go out to those product companies and encourage them to do that. And so now there are something like 30,000 skills available on Alexa. So they've really driven that as a de facto standard in the industry. And the speed of evolution of that skills interface is just phenomenal. And I think they're going to continue to drive it so quickly that you'll see more and more sophisticated capabilities that are coming out of that. Well, I think societally we have some questions about how, is that okay to have 2 or 3 large companies driving that?
That's going to be the question. That's kind of like what we say with the carriers, right?
Yeah.
Is it enough? But Rob, we're out of time, but thank you for being with us today, okay?
Yeah, Peggy, pleasure to talk to you.
Tell us what's your URL so our listeners can go and follow you.
Sure, we're at www.cirrent.com.
All right, well, we are still coming to you live, so stick around. Well, we'll be back again tomorrow, so we hope that you will come back and enjoy all this. You can find us again on Twitter. This is the Peggy Smedley Show. Please continue to tweet at us at Peggy_Smedley or ConnectedWMag. Thanks for listening. This is the Peggy Smedley Show, the podcasting voice of IoT and relevant technology. Remember, with great technology comes great responsibility.